Hey guys, so now that the worldwide celebration has been coming to a conclusion for about a week at this point, I haven't really gotten anything new in a while other than Oob. But now that this celebration is becoming to a conclusion now, I think it's about time we go back and sort of look at what we ended up getting as a whole, and I wanted to compare it to past download celebrations. And sort of rank it amongst, how good was the celebration really, and was it as bad as people have been saying? Because I've seen a lot of people act very negatively towards this celebration in particular. A lot of people saying it's the worst celebration in the game's history, stuff like that. So I just wanted to take this time to look back at what we got from this, and I guess just sort of analyze what we got. And before we jump in, I do want to quickly say that I don't think this celebration is as bad as people are making it out to be. I definitely don't think it was good. They could have done a lot better, but for people that are saying this is like the worst celebration ever, I don't agree with that, just right off the bat. So I guess we can start with the stones that were given out. So for a lot of people, this is a big factor because obviously if you're free to play or you're a light spender, this is directly going to impact how much fun you have with the game, right? A lot of the fun of this game, obviously being a gacha game, collection game, comes out of if you're able to obtain the new units or not. So the stones that were given out on JP were 805. So total throughout the entire thing. This includes the countdown celebration, includes Dokkan Now, includes social media, everything. It's all inclusive. Everything that has to do with celebration. 805 stones total. Now on Global actually ended up getting a significantly more amount of stones. In total, they got 870, which is obviously 65 more than JP ended up getting. So, I mean, when people say JP shaft, I guess this is one of the things you can point to and say, yeah, I mean, they basically got shafted out of a multi in, 3 singles. So that is something to consider there. I also have a tab pulled up for the 300 million download celebration, which was the counterpart to this celebration that was held last year. That featured basically the conclusion to the Android/Cell saga, where we got the LR AGL Gohan and Int Cell. Now, if you take a look at the Dragon Stones that were given out here, I believe this is only global. I don't know if they counted the JP side over here on the wiki, but we ended up getting 1,070 stones on for this celebration. So 1,070 compared to 870. So we got a whole 200 more stones on the celebration we had last year. So that is definitely a major thing to consider. 200 stones is a lot. That's almost a quarter of the amount of stones we got total for the celebration. So I mean that is, and if you look at JP, 1,070 stones compared to 805. That's like 265 more stones that we got last year, which is 5 multis. It's a lot. So definitely the W is going to go to the celebration we had last year. Now, the biggest thing I want to talk about is the amount of content that was released during this celebration as a whole. And I think it's important to talk about, when you're ranking celebrations in this game and just, this game, what they're doing overall. I think it's important to talk about, what makes a celebration good, or fun, or impactful, etc. Whatever word you want to use to describe how good a celebration really is. And this is a subjective topic because everybody enjoys different things in the game. A lot of people really only care about the units, and that's a valid stance on how to view this game because it's a gacha game, it's a collection game. So if you're able to obtain the new units, you're obviously going to have a lot more fun in the game. If you don't obtain the units, you're going to have a lot less fun in the game. That's just intrinsically what happens in these types of games, being a gacha game. So, because we can take a look at the new units first, I personally... this is the countdown. We want to begin here right now. Me personally, I much more value the events and the new content instead of just the new units that released during a celebration. In my opinion... it's great if you pull the new units, if they release just a bunch of new units, no new events, but if there's nowhere to use them in the game, if there's no new content to tackle, to challenge yourself with, then it's sort of boring, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, you can always go back and challenge older stuff with them, But constantly replaying old events that you've already beaten 1,000 times, not necessarily the most fun thing in my opinion, but I mean, you know, new units are in some ways contributing to the fun factor in terms of, you know, being able to use them in any event you want. Okay, so last year, we can just talk about the units quickly, compare them. Let's look. So we got AGL Gohan and Int Cell. So right off the bat, I know what you guys are thinking. The the infamous transformation conditions of these two units, both these units actually. Gohan in particular, in my opinion, is just like very egregious in terms of the conditions being way too strict and restrictive. Even to this day, it is very tough to get him to transform. I mean, yeah, nowadays you have more options in terms of units that you can put on there with him, but it's forever going to be difficult to get him to transform on the teams that he can perform well on. But that's the big gripe I had with the units the past year in the celebration. And I would argue overall, yes, we did get Vegito. Everybody, of course, loves Vegito. So, you know, he's a top-grossing machine. You want top-grossing? Release the Vegito unit, right? That's just how it goes. Boo-Tanks, I mean, we finally got a Majin Buu saga, or Majin Buu unit that's an LR. First one ever. So, obviously, it's important that we got that out of the way. But if we had to sort of look at both of these Dual Dokkan Fests and say which one I think was more hype for the game overall, I think it was definitely this one last year, with the Gohan versus Cell. I think Cell is a more popular villain than Buu, and I think Vegito is probably a more popular character than Gohan here, just in terms of strict popularity. But we never really had a like super true father-son Kamehameha Gohan from the fight versus Cell, other than LR in Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. But him being a Dokkan, or not a unfeatured LR that was not really ever super easily obtainable for a lot of players. I'm not saying this guy was easily obtainable, but this guy's infinitely more easily obtainable than the Int one. You know, this guy's animations were infinitely better. He himself as a unit is infinitely better than the Int one. Everything about this unit is just like it was super hype when he dropped. We had the whole Twitter thing, you know, Team Gohan versus Team Cell. The hype was much more built up for this. But you know, Vegito is obviously incredibly hype. But I think if we had to pick which of these two Dual Dokkan Fests really had a bigger impact in terms of hype on the community, I would have to go with this one, in my opinion. You guys might disagree with me. So that's my take on both of the units, the main units that were released during this celebration. So let's go back and take a look at the actual content that dropped during the celebration. We can talk about the Countdown campaign first, and I think this is really where the problem stemmed from in terms of this year's celebration. So the Countdown celebration started back on August 20th. Right now, it is basically the end of September. It is September 29th. And I think this celebration is slated to end on like October 4th or something like that. Yeah, October 4th is going to be the last day of the celebration. So this celebration is going on for a long time. The countdown for this celebration started on August 19th and it went to October 2nd. So this one also went for a long time. But the major difference between this celebration and the one we have this year is taking a look at the content we got during the Countdown campaign. The really only big piece of content we got was a new story event. And then like an update to this one or something like that. So really not too much content for the Countdown portion of the celebration here. Whereas with this year, you know, we got the ticket banner, we got missions, etc., and we got the legendary campaign for Hercule, which is nice. We got, for the first time ever, a new mode for Global Explosive Chain Battle. I'm mostly going to be talking from a standpoint on Global, because that's the version that I made. Explosive Chain Battle, incredibly hyped new mode for Global that we've been waiting for a long time. We got a new stage of Infinite Dragon Ball History, which is pretty decent content. Then we got this open every day. I mean, there was a lot more content, obviously, in the Countdown celebration this year than we did have last year. And I'm not saying it's bad that we had more content during the Countdown portion of the celebration, but I think that results in the timing in terms of them, you know, the pacing, I guess is the word I'm looking for. The pacing of the content was a lot more spread out and sparse this year than it was last year, and that makes it feel like there's less content. And that contributes to people being bored and upset with the pacing. Whereas last year, you go to part one, I can tell you even right now before looking at this info, we definitely received a lot more content during part one last year than we did this year. So part one last year, let's go through this. Basically all the normal stuff we got this year. Tile breaking contest, we didn't get this until part two this year, but the way that they handled the JP versus Global sort of like, I guess, competition last year, I think was handled a lot better than this year because of the fact that they basically made it so that there were different like subsections that you had to compete against the other version with. So it's like, use this unit X amount of times, clear this X amount of times, use this amount of support items, and then whichever version won in those subcategories would end up winning. Whereas with this year, it was just like there's one bar, and as long as you were the version that had more of the bar filled up, you won. So I feel like this was a lot more interactive competition between both versions because you could pick and choose which category you wanted to focus on, and there was more strategy in that because if you had a community of people, you could be like, okay, we're going to focus on this specific aspect of the competition so that we can guarantee that we get this done. So I think it was a lot more interactive last year with this particular facet of the celebration. Okay, next we had just general missions, etc., Dokkan events, typical stuff. So we got a new story event. We got another new story event. So we got 2 new story events. We got this, which is kind of it's only once a day, so it wasn't really. I wouldn't really call this content. It was just whatever. New stages of Super Battle Road, very, very important. And then that's pretty much all the content we got. Oh, we also got the special edition of Battlefield, and then we got these banners, which we didn't get this year, and obviously the potential system stuff. So that's all we got for part 1 last year. This year, the content we got for part 1. We got this Escape from the Innards of Boo, which is no content, it's just free stuff. New Dokkan events, Dokkan event. What else? We got this, which is basically the same exact thing as the Hyperbolic Time Chamber event last year, where you just run it once a day and that's it. And new stage of Boss Rush, and we got Launches event, which again is pretty much just once a week. You should run it once a week. It takes 5 seconds, and then we got a new special edition of Battlefield. So clearly a lot more going on last year during part 1, which again plays into the pacing of how they handled this. And I feel like a lot of people were super upset with the content that was released in part 1. And even though part 2, we'll take a look at part 2 in a second, but even though part 2 really offered a lot this year, the pacing of this celebration, once again, is the main culprit behind why I believe people were upset with this. Because part 1, I feel like instead of back-loading part 2 with all the content, they needed to focus more so on part 1. And I think they put all their eggs into the basket of Vegito carrying the celebration, which is a feasible thing to think about. But I think we're past the point of just being in awe of Vegito every single time, just because this is like Vegito number 20 in the game. So I don't know. I think last year, we'll take a look at, let me just scroll down here. 2 new story events. I mean, did we get new story events in here? We did, but wasn't that part of, hold on. Was it part of the countdown? No, wasn't it? Am I crazy? Oh yeah, we did get a new story event. Okay, I missed that. I was like, what? Yeah, we definitely got a new story event. Okay. So basically, we got 1 extra story event last year, and we got new stages of Super Battle Road last year, which is a big deal. And we got this, but this isn't really content. Yeah, I mean, new stages of Super Battle Road is huge, and 1 extra story event, and then I think this also is a big. People don't really consider this because people are just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this passively, whatever. But for a lot of people, like actively contributing to the different subcategories here, I think actually is considered content. So there was just a significant amount of more content released last year during part 1 than this year, and that really set people's mood when we jumped into part 2, where people were like, okay, yeah, part 1 sucked, so I expect part 2 to be really, really good. So let's look at part 2 last year. Part 2 last year, we got Dragon Ball Hunt stuff, Ultimate Lifeform Cell. It's kind of like filler stuff. Extreme Z area for the new units, the story event units. This was a new event. This was the first time Infinite Dragon Ball history released, so a brand new mode. And we got social media stuff. World Tournament was going on, so a lot of stuff going on. And that's not all, because we also had this. And we'll take a look at this in a second, but this I feel like is the real deciding factor in me concluding that this celebration last year was much superior to the one this year. But quickly taking a look at part 2 this year, so more missions. We got again, this I believe was handled way worse this year than it was last year, just because it was just 1 bar, blah blah blah. New stages added here. We got easy A's for the free units. This guy's easying, but this isn't. Again, I don't really think this is content, because you literally just purchase the medals from the shop. It's fine, I guess. This is the most important thing that they released this celebration. This, I think, carried the entire celebration, but we'll talk about that in a second. New stage for Dragon Ball History, very good. And then this, which again is just sort of play passively and collect rewards. And then there was no sort of like raid event going on. So this is all the content we got. Now, I would argue, and I think a lot of people would agree with me here, that Part 2 is a lot better, or was a lot better than Part 1, just because of this. Extreme Super Battle Road. Now, I'm going to be the first to say this. I'm not going to be the first to say this. I've said this many times in my previous videos as well, but this should have been out in March for Global. I still, to this day, I still fail to understand why they did not release this during Saiyan Day on Global when JP got this event during Saiyan Day, which was a combined celebration. Again, I've been saying this for many months at this point. If you're going to do a combined celebration, you have to release the same content. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of it being a combined celebration. Otherwise, it might as well just be different celebrations, right? And yeah, I get the argument where it's like, oh, skill orbs worn out on Global, so they couldn't release this back then. I just find that completely BS. Just release skill orbs ahead of time. They did the same thing with transformations. They did the same thing with active skills. They can do it with skill orbs. Skill orbs suck. The whole equipment system sucks. I'm sorry. It's just trash. It's the worst system in the game, I think. That's a topic for another video, but this should have been out on Global 6 months ago. And then the new stages that JP just got should have also been released on Global so that it feels more like a combined celebration. I'm not saying it's bad that they released this now, because it had to come out at some point. And I feel like this definitely can fill in a lot of the time that we're sort of looking for at this point, because there's nothing else to do. But I don't know. Even Part 2 feels a little bit weak to me here. We can talk about the unit as well, but I don't know. This just had a lot more content, and I also feel that the raid event where you fought Cell, you get a bunch of rewards, and I feel like a lot of the Dragon Stones that we received, we got a lot more Dragon Stones last year. A lot of that was probably as a result of this, let alone orbs, Kai, stuff like that. And an actual EZA in the STR Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, he's really good. So, people don't really give raid events enough credit, I don't think, in this game, but they actually are quite fun to do. You band together with a bunch of other people to overcome a common goal on both versions, JP and Global. And this year, all they did was, instead of doing a raid event, they did this, where you don't actually do anything. It's just, a social media thing, right? So, I don't know. I think, and we can talk about the units as well. So the one point I will make is I do believe that the unit they released in Part 2 for this year was way superior than they did in the Gohan and Cell celebration, because yeah, LR androids, the androids definitely need more representation in the game, I feel like, but you just can't compare them to you are number one Vegeta. I feel like this character, this scene in the series just completely outclasses anything the androids did. And I feel like if they were to do a Bye Guys Goku, if they did a Bye Guys Goku last year for Part 2, maybe they did a dual Top Legendary Summon, and yeah, I get that they wanted to revamp Gohan's SA, but instead of Gohan, if they put Bye Guys Goku and the LR androids on here, and this was the Top Legendary Summon, this very quickly becomes one of the better celebrations, because that would have been imprinted in people's minds. We're like, okay, yeah, we're getting something huge during the Part 2. And Vegeta, I would say, definitely is way more hype. They really did a better job with this unit than they did with the LR androids. So that is definitely a win for the download celebration, or I guess the worldwide celebration this year. But that's pretty much all I have here. I would definitely say that although the celebration wasn't really that great, we still did get a lot of stuff here. For people saying this is the worst celebration ever, I don't agree. I think that title would probably go to Saiyan Day. Saiyan Day 2020 for Global specifically. That celebration was trash. For how hyped they built up Saiyan Day, we had a Dokkan Now for it. Yeah, Bardock released at the same time in both versions. It was a combined celebration, and it was just completely trash. And yeah, I get that this is on a completely different level of a celebration than Saiyan Day. This is supposed to be like the biggest celebration of the year. I just didn't feel it. I didn't feel the hype this year as I did last year. Last year just felt way more hype. And again, it wasn't like terrible, right? The celebration wasn't terrible by any means. I feel like the number one culprit, just to conclude the video at this point, the main culprit behind people trashing on the celebration and calling it just the worst celebration ever, I feel like the main culprit was the pacing. If, you know, they treated this countdown portion the same way that they did last year, where they didn't release too little content, but they didn't overload it with content like I feel like they did this year with the new mode coming out. I feel like Chain Battle should have been... okay, so there's two routes they could have went down. They could have released Chain Battle during the countdown celebration, and then they could have released another Chain Battle during either part 1 or part 2. That would have made it feel a lot better. But they didn't. So, I mean, again, definitely lacking in content, but I wouldn't say it's the worst celebration ever. It's just the pacing made it feel like there was no content. So you guys can let me know down below what you think, if you agree, disagree. I know probably a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but that's fine. I don't mind that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you all in the next one.